It is one of the worst fears that parents ever have, their child being sexually abused.
Tonight we're going to try to help you understand how predators manipulate children into trusting them and then use that trust to harm them. Jennifer Waugh has interviewed a convicted sexual predator who was serving a 25-year sentence for molesting local children who ranged in age from 4 to 10. It is an interview he asked to do, telling us he wants to help warn parents about criminals like him. Jen.
Harvey Lee Duncan wrote us this letter asking us to interview him because he says he wants to help parents better protect their children from predators. And while I'll admit, a lot of what he told me was very difficult to listen to, we're bringing you his story solely in an effort to save children from sexual abuse. Harvey Duncan says he molested 5 girls in 1995. Some children lived in Mandarin, others lived in Riverside. And now he is telling us how he got those girls to trust him, how he manipulated them for so long into keeping it a secret from everyone, and the mistakes he says parents make that allow for a predator like him to take advantage of their children.
At the time it was happening, it just seemed to all fit together. It just seemed just like a natural flow.
But what you're saying is it seemed like a natural flow to touch little girls. Do you see how that is very disturbing?
As a parent, it is hard to hear.
How old were the children?
Oh, they were about, I think, something like 8, 9, something like that.
Our interview taking place in a mock courtroom next to the warden's office behind the prison walls of Union Correctional Facility in Rayford. Harvey Duncan is 62 years old. He served nearly 12 years of a 25-year sentence.
At what point during your marriage did this activity start with children?
Believe it or not, very shortly after we were married.
Duncan says first he molested 2 family members. It happened when he was living in Mandarin. Next, he says it was 3 young sisters living in Riverside, friends of the family. He says his wife had no idea what he was doing and that earning the children's trust was easy.
If they believe that you will listen to them and talk to them, they start asking you questions, and then eventually they start bringing up questions about, you know, the body and sex and stuff that they're afraid to talk to their parents and others about. And that's how that's really how it got started.
He says young girls are emotionally needy. He says parents make a big mistake not being open with them about their bodies and about sex, something he says predators take advantage of.
They knew from experience that their parents would, if they brought them up, they'd just say, "Oh, don't worry about it, you're too young for that stuff." And
Okay, well, let me ask you about this, because these are children who are 8 and 9. Yes. So you're saying they wanted to ask you questions about sex at that age?
Oh, yeah. He said that, yeah, we've been watching our parents while they thought we were asleep, and they started asking me about what they've seen and stuff. And I cannot deny that once the conversation got started, it's very, you know, that I ended up manipulating it a little bit.
During our nearly 2-hour-long interview, Harvey Duncan never would discuss what he did to the girls, only to say he did not have intercourse with them. He pled guilty in 2002 to lewd assault on a child. sexual battery of a child under 12 years old, and sexual performance by a child. The girls were just 10, 8, 7, 6, and 4 years old. His arrest report says he tried to have sex with one of them. He says their parents never suspected him.
They let him stay over at our house sometimes. When we went over to visit, and we went home, the kids would want to come with us.
We have no way of reaching the children or their parents. That's because the names and addresses of all child abuse victims are blacked out on all of the police reports to protect their privacy. We can only assume, though, that the parents didn't consider Harvey Duncan a threat. Perhaps it's because he and his wife had been married for 30 years. He had a job working as an electrician. He and his wife even had a son together. A perfect disguise that fooled the girls.
How would you describe how they felt about you?
As far as I know, they seem to like me a great deal. They wanted to spend a lot of time with me when they could.
It sounds to me like you somehow were able to manipulate these children into not telling their parents what was happening.
Actually,
how were you able to do that?
Tell you the truth, I never said one time, don't say anything about it. In fact, I even actually stressed being honest.
But the truth remained hidden for nearly 2 years. What Duncan told me next will sound like twisted rationalizing by a perverted mind. We want you to hear it because it illustrates how effective pedophiles can be at manipulating children. Duncan claims the girls liked what he was doing to them.
Well, I told them this: as long as I hear good reports from your parents that that you're doing well at home and well at school, then I would let them participate in what we were doing. And
that sounds like a reward.
Well,
abuse was used as a reward.
And
how can that be?
I don't. Well, that's just the way I did things. I know I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or otherwise. I'm just saying that that's the way it worked.
What I think parents can use as a takeaway, I certainly am with my 4- and 7-year-old from this disturbing look into the mind of a predator, a couple of things. First, if your child is going over to a neighbor's house, ask will your child ever be left alone with that person? Keep this in mind. I talked with a local attorney who prosecutes child sex abuse cases all the time. He says it's usually a relative, a family friend, or a neighbor who commits this kind of crime. Rarely, he says, is it a complete stranger. One more thing. Duncan told me he molested those 3 sisters when they were all together. Don't assume your child is safe from a predator just because they have another friend